Johnnie Taylor was one of the most talented soul singers of his time. However, behind the music, his life was full of pain, family drama, and broken relationships. From struggles with addiction to children he barely knew, and battles over money even after his death, the truth about Johnnie Taylor is sad and shocking. This is the heartbreaking story of Johnnie Taylor. Johnnie Taylor was born in Crawfordsville, Arkansas, to Willie Taylor and Ida Blackman. His birth year has always been a bit of a mystery. His official records say he was born in 1934, but he often told people he was born in 1938. Even his gravestone says May 1937. He grew up around West Memphis, where he started singing in church as a young boy. When his family later moved to Kansas City, he joined a gospel group called the Melody Kings. However, it was when he moved to Chicago in the early 1950s that his music journey really began to take off. There, he sang doo-wop with a group called the Five Echoes. Some of their records, released through labels like Sabre and VJ, are now rare gems for collectors. Even as a teenager, Taylor's voice stood out. He sang with powerful gospel groups like the Highway QCs and the Soul Stirrers. In fact, in 1957, Johnnie was chosen to replace Cook in the Soul Stirrers after Sam left to focus on his solo career. The Soul Stirrers had been around since the 1920s and were known for changing gospel music by blending traditional church sounds with a smoother, soulful style. However, Johnnie Taylor was not just a typical gospel singer. He had a wild side that didn't always fit in with the church scene. In 1960, he got in trouble with the law after a car accident led police to find out he had been driving under the influence of marijuana. One of Johnnie Taylor's daughters, Bryant, once shared a story that gives a deeper look into who her father really was. She said that Bobby Womack told her, "You know, me and your dad did a lot of coke together." He also said he truly loved Johnnie and always sang his songs. Sam Moore, from the famous duo Sam and Dave, also told her that Johnnie had a violent side and often had other women even when he was in a relationship. Moore even said he once saw Taylor with a woman whose teeth he had just knocked out. After leaving the Soul Stirrers, Johnnie briefly became a Baptist preacher and went by the name Reverend Johnnie Taylor. But that didn't last long. Just a year later, he started recording secular music for SAR Records, the same label Sam Cooke had started. However, when Cooke died in 1964, the label quickly shut down. In 1966, Johnnie moved to Memphis and signed with Stax Records, where he was given the nickname the Philosopher of Soul. The label was flourishing thanks to stars like Carla Thomas, Otis Redding, and Sam and Dave. Taylor proved himself immediately, releasing a string of top 40 R&B singles during his first year at the label. He recorded with the label's legendary house band, including Booker T and the MGs. When it came to his music, Taylor worked regularly with several of the in-house writers at the label, including Betty Crutcher, Homer Banks, and Raymond Jackson. Taylor also formed a particularly fruitful creative partnership with the Detroit-based producer and songwriter Don Davis, who joined Stax in the late 60s. Stax Records was going through a hard time in 1968. They had just lost their biggest star, Otis Redding, in a tragic plane crash. Then their deal with Atlantic Records fell apart, and suddenly many of Stax's top artists were no longer with them. The label was left on its own, without the big names that had made it famous. But Johnnie Taylor was still there. And just when Stax needed a win, he delivered it. In the fall of 1968, he released Who's Making Love, and it became a huge hit. The song shot up the charts, reaching the top 5 on Billboard's Hot 100 and becoming Taylor's first #1 on the R&B chart. It also earned him a gold record and a Grammy nomination. By 1969, Johnnie Taylor wasn't just saving Stax, he was becoming the face of its future. While Taylor was with Stax Records, he became one of the biggest names in R&B. He had over a dozen hit songs during that time, including the popular Jody's Got Your Girl and Gone, which reached number 23 on the Billboard Hot 100 chart. Other favorites were Cheaper to Keep Her, written by Mac Rice, and I Believe in You, You Believe in Me, which was produced by Don Davis. That last one was a huge success. It climbed to number 11 on the Hot 100 and sold over 1 million copies, earning a gold disc in October 1973. He even appeared in the 1973 documentary Watt Stax, which celebrated black music and culture. But when Stax closed down in 1975, Johnnie didn't slow down. He moved over to Columbia Records and teamed up again with producer Don Davis. That's when he released the biggest hit of his entire career, Disco Lady, in 1976. The song exploded, staying at #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 for 4 weeks and topping the R&B chart for 6. It even made it to number 25 on the UK charts. Disco Lady made history as the first single ever to be certified platinum by the RIAA, meaning it sold over 2 million copies. Disco Lady came from the album Eargasm, but not everyone was happy about it. Many radio stations refused to play the album because they thought it was too sexual. Still, that didn't stop fans from loving it. The success of the record showed that people really connected with Taylor's bold and passionate style. Because Disco Lady came out during the height of the disco era, people started calling Taylor a disco singer, even though he didn't see himself that way and didn't like the label. When follow-up hits didn't come, Taylor decided to move on. In the 1980s, he switched gears and became a radio DJ at KKDA, a station based in the Dallas area where he had settled down. The station mostly played classic R&B, soul, and blues, and many of the DJs were musicians themselves. Taylor became known as the Wailer Johnnie Taylor on air. After a short time with a small record label in Los Angeles, Taylor got a fresh start with Malaco Records. The label's founder, Tommy Couch, and his partner, Wolf Stevenson, had heard Taylor sing at the funeral of blues singer ZZ Hill in 1984. And they were so impressed, they offered him a deal. If you are enjoying this video, appreciate it by giving it a thumbs up. And if you have not subscribed, what are you waiting for? Hit that subscribe button. At Malaco, Taylor found the same kind of creative freedom he once enjoyed at Stax. He worked with top musicians, including the legendary Muscle Shoals rhythm section and old friends like keyboardist Carson Whitsett. With this strong support, Taylor stayed with Malaco for 16 years and recorded 10 albums. In 1996, his 8th album for Malaco Records, Good Love, became a major hit. It shot to #1 on the Billboard Top Blues Albums chart and even reached number 15 on the R&B chart. It turned out to be the most successful record in Malaco's history. Riding that wave of success, the label filmed a live concert video of Taylor performing at the Longhorn Ballroom in Dallas in the summer of 1997. Some parts were also recorded at the 1001 nightclub in Jackson, Mississippi, capturing Taylor's signature energy on stage. His final song, Soul Heaven, felt like a farewell letter. In it, Taylor imagined himself at a magical concert in the sky, surrounded by music legends who had passed on, people like Louis Armstrong, Otis Redding, ZZ Hill, and even the notorious B.I.G. It was a touching tribute to the artists who inspired him and shaped the music world. Even though his fame had faded compared to earlier years, Taylor never stopped performing. He continued to tour across the country, playing for loyal fans in R&B clubs and venues that still welcomed his smooth voice and soulful sound. Johnnie Taylor passed away on May 31, 2000, at the age of 66, after suffering a heart attack in Dallas, Texas. Johnnie married Gurleen Rockett, and together they had 2 children, John Harrison Taylor and Tasha Taylor, both of whom followed in their father's footsteps and became musicians. Sadly, Taylor and Rockett had finalized their divorce just 21 days before his death. Taylor's life may have been full of music and fame, but behind the scenes, things were much more complicated, especially when it came to family. After he passed away in May 2000, a lot came to light about his personal life. Taylor had been married twice and openly said he had 6 children. But when he died, he didn't leave a will. That meant those 6 children had to split everything he left behind. Things took a surprising turn when 3 more people came forward, claiming Taylor was also their father. One of them was a woman named Bryant from Charlotte. She wasn't alone. Chiffon Brown from Louisiana and Tyrone Hooker from Missouri also claimed to be his children. DNA tests proved all 3 were right. That meant Taylor actually had 9 children, and they each got an equal share of his estate. By the time he died, Taylor owned a house in Texas worth $1.5 million, but he also owed over $200,000 in back taxes. Bryant shared what it was like finally speaking with her father at the age of 28. She said he admitted he always knew she was his daughter, but when she asked why he never tried to be in her life or help her mom, his answer didn't sit right with her. He claimed it was because her mother had remarried. She also said she's never met any of her father's brothers and doesn't know much about his side of the family. She said, "To me, it will always be a piece of me missing." Bryant added that her grandmother, Arona Phillips Bryant, had a deep connection to gospel music too. Back in the day in Gastonia, North Carolina, she would host famous gospel singers like Sam Cooke, the Soul Stirrers, the Staple Singers, and others, since black performers weren't allowed to stay in hotels or eat at restaurants in town. That meant many of those music legends ended up gathering at Bryant's family home. It was during those gospel concerts in Gastonia that Johnnie Taylor met Peggy Veronica Bryant, the young girl who would later become the mother of his daughter, Bryant. At the time, Peggy was only 15 years old, and she and Taylor dated for about 2 years. Bryant said her mother told her that when she found out she was pregnant, Taylor seemed shocked. He said, "We only did it one time," and she told him that's all it takes. Bryant didn't speak to her father until she was 28 years old. At the time, she was living in Savannah, Georgia, and working as a pharmacy technician. When they finally did talk, Taylor's first words weren't exactly what she hoped for. He didn't ask about her life or try to apologize. Instead, he commented on her legs, saying she must have inherited her mother's pretty ones. Bryant wasn't having it. She asked him directly, "Why didn't you look for me?" And while they tried to keep in touch over the years, it wasn't always easy. Some conversations were warm and caring, but others would turn ugly. She said she sometimes had to hang up on him when he got rude and mean. She believed a lot of that had to do with his lifelong struggles with drugs. Despite the ups and downs, Bryant wanted her son, Wesley Taylor Bryant, named after Johnnie Taylor, to have a relationship with his grandfather. She said, "My son was smart in school, a great athlete, and he was my pride and joy." At one point, she gave Taylor an ultimatum. "If you don't come to your grandson's graduation or his party, I'm done with you, because I'm tired of trying to build a relationship with you." The family's complicated story and the battle over Taylor's estate later caught national attention. In 2011, their case was featured in the documentary series The Will: Family Secrets Revealed on Investigation Discovery, shedding light on the hidden truths and pain that followed Taylor's fame. In 2021, Rolling Stone published a story that pulled back the curtain on the struggles Johnnie Taylor's children were facing, especially his daughter, Fonda Bryant. As one of the 9 heirs to his estate, Fonda had spent over a decade trying to understand what happened to the royalty payments her father was supposed to be getting from Sony Music. But every time she asked questions, she ran into a wall. Sony told her that Johnnie Taylor actually owed them money. But when she asked to see proof of that debt, they couldn't show her anything solid. Fonda said, "I kept reaching out and asking, when is this debt going to be forgiven? They could never give me a straight answer." Things got even more frustrating in 2020 after George Floyd's murder. Sony made headlines by promising to donate $100 million to support social justice efforts. But to Fonda, it didn't add up. She said, "I was like, wait a minute. How can Sony give away $100 million for justice when they're not even paying us what's rightfully ours? How can they do that?" She wrote to Sony's president, calling them out. She said if they really cared about justice, they should take care of the artists who made them money and their families first. Otherwise, the donation was just all talk. Eventually, Sony agreed to clear Johnnie Taylor's so-called debt and made a one-time payment of $97,000 to his ex-wife and children. But to Fonda, that still wasn't enough. She said, "When you think about it, that's not a lot of money. For nearly 21 years, Sony had been taking money from us." Bryant believed Sony wasn't being honest about the money her father, Johnnie Taylor, was supposed to be earning. She and the other heirs just wanted answers, but Sony wouldn't give them much. They even refused to share basic financial information about Taylor's royalties. For Bryant, that secrecy only made things worse. She felt that if Sony could hide behind numbers, they should at least be open with the family of the man who helped make their company millions. However, the law was on Sony's side. As music attorney Aaron M. Jacobson explained, labels aren't just going to hand over financial records to anyone who asks. Families like Bryant's do have the right to request an audit if they think the label is hiding something, but there's a catch. Those audits are very expensive, often costing more than the heirs can afford. For people like Bryant, doing a full audit just wasn't realistic. Even though the fight for royalties dragged on, Johnnie Taylor's impact on music was never in doubt. In 1999, he received the Pioneer Award from the Rhythm and Blues Foundation. He was also a 3-time Grammy nominee. In 2015, Taylor was inducted into the National Rhythm and Blues Hall of Fame. And in 2022, he made it into the Blues Hall of Fame too. When he was inducted, the Blues Hall of Fame mentioned the reason, saying Taylor liked to emphasize that he could sing more than blues, and he proved it, whether he was doing gospel, soul, or R&B. But when it came to blues, especially in front of black audiences, Johnnie Taylor was the headliner. Which of Johnnie Taylor's songs is your favorite? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss out on our latest content.